Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Very good. This is Kathleen Doherty.
Hello, Catherine.
Hi, Kate.
Hello.
Hi.
Ask if you want a big picture of me behind.
You want a big picture of Jerry behind me?
Sure. Everybody safe there? Everybody's doing good?
Yeah, they are, Dave. Thank you.
Good, good.
How's Phil doing, by the way?
He's doing okay. He went out for the first time. He went down McSherry's to look at some shrubs for the first time.
Oh, good.
So he's trying to get out. We tried to keep him isolated the last few weeks.
Well, that's a good reason to.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but it's good to see that I watched the news last night again. There's no cases up here, so that's a cool thing.
That's a cool thing. Well, tell him I said hi, will you, please?
Will do. Will do.
Thank you. Jerry and I both. Yeah. There's a special place in our heart for Bill.
Cool. So hopefully this will work a little bit better next. You seem to get on much better this time than you did last time.
Yeah. Well, we've had to use Zoom a couple times now, so we're getting kind of used to it.
It is too bad you didn't put any stock in it. I think it's a private company, but this guy must be doing a hell of a business with Zoom.
I would think so.
Yeah.
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 Oh, Jerry just said the company's still losing money.
Really? Wow. We're switching from as a company, we're switching from GoToMeeting to Zoom because it's much easier to use. So my boss likes it because it's.
The high school's using the Google system, so.
Yes, I use mine always.
Somebody's calling in.
Yep. What I forgot to do last time, and I got to remember to do this, is for those people that are not on video, we need to ask who they are because we don't know who they were.
Okay.
Hi, this is Hank.
Hi, Hank.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I'm going to mute myself.
Okay.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Bill.
Okay, excellent. Like the previous meeting, I'm not going to be on video, but I will be listening in on audio in order to record and take notes.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Bill.
This is David and Catherine.
Okay, this is Scott.
Hey, Scott, how
I'm
you
having
doing?
some computer issues. I'm having some computer issues, so I'm calling in for the moment, but I'll switch to the computer if I can get that sorted out.
Okay.
So who's here so far?
Kathleen, Hank, and Will, and myself. That's it for now.
Hi, everybody.
Okay.
Have you been watching any of the TV shows that are doing these virtual TV interviews and stuff? Like Jimmy Kimmel and
Yeah, of course.
Ellen. Yeah,
Yeah, they
Ellen
were
is,
riot. Yeah, Jimmy Kimmel was good.
yeah, Jimmy Kimmel is really funny. And yes, I have pants on because that was his skit last night that he wasn't wearing pants. So it's funny because I work remote all the time, and now all my coworkers are now working remote, and they were like, because our company just went because we're in Chicago, our corporate office is in Chicago, that they can't go to work. So we are, all of them are now remote. So we're having Zoom meetings and all of that. So they always joked with me. They said, do you wear like pants normally when you're on videos? I said, well,
I hope
yes.
so.
Yes, but in the summer, I'm always wearing shorts. Where you have to dress up, I can still wear shorts and I wear a nice shirt and nobody knows that I have shorts on.
David, this is Jerry. During the Supreme Court hearing the other day, one of the justices in their home flushed the toilet, and you could hear it during the Supreme Court hearing. So if you hear a toilet flushing, it's just in keeping.
We had a Zoom meeting and my sister-in-law was at one house and her husband was at their house and she was at another place. He's walking around, he's got it on his phone, not his computer. And all of a sudden he's standing in a room and my sister-in-law says, Bruce, you're in the bathroom, Bruce. Get out of the bathroom. That's the bathroom wallpaper. You know?
I'm sure there's some stories out there about people, you know, walking by someone else that's doing Zoom and not realizing it in some sort of state of disattire or something.
Well, there was a reporter, there's a thing on Facebook, there was a reporter who was doing her broadcast and she was living with her father and her father walked behind her in his shorts, in his underwear. Didn't realize she was on the air yet. So.
Well, there's always been stories about, you know, when they're doing like go to meetings and stuff where you're sharing your computer screen.
Yep.
And either leaving windows open that you might not want other people to see that you're browsing, or,
Yeah.
you know, pop-ups like notifications and stuff.
Yep. Hello, Chris.
Howdy.
Hi, Chris.
Howdy.
Hi,
Scott's
Chris.
on, but it's not on video yet. He's just calling in right now.
Oh, yeah. Let me work at that again.
So I hope Dick has his hat on tonight so he can take it off.
Katie Kim is Sarah. Hi.
Oh,
I'm
how you
here.
doing?
Okay, Sarah.
See, people are colorful. I look washed out.
I think it has to do with your camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to get a new computer. I can't look like this.
Like those on Idol where they have that light that's around their cameras. You can buy them at Staples, but it's supposed to give you a more natural lighting, visual light that people
I'll
are
have to
doing
check-
now.
I'll have to check that out.
Hello.
I will say this though, those lights can make it unbearably hot, so be sure to prepare your environment accordingly.
Will do.
Okay, so the only one that we're waiting for is actually Bill.
There we go.
And I don't know if Huntley's joining us or not.
I saw him yesterday. He said he was going to.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm on the computer now.
Yep, we see you.
You look washed out too, Scott. Welcome to the club.
Thanks.
I think that might have something to do with the glare from the picture frames behind him, but I could be wrong.
But look at Kathleen and David. They look colorful.
Well, I have a light here that's indirect, so it's a
Oh, all right.
gold light.
I'll have to learn to do that.
Yep. Hello.
Hello, Bill.
Hello. How are we doing?
Doing good. We've got Hank, Kathleen, Scott, Chris, Sarah, and Will on the phone.
Great.
And Chris said that he heard from Huntley that he was going to be joining us. So I don't know if you want to wait for a few more minutes.
Okay.
6.
we'll do, are you? I don't know, I may be getting a call saying he can't make it.
Hi, Dick, how are you?
Oh, that's right. We're missing Dick too.
Okay, hang on a sec. I'll put you on the line with Bill. He's on right now. Dick Benner.
Yeah, hey, Dick.
Just hold the phone up to your speaker. That'll work.
Oh, wow. Huh. Did you got the invitation email? Yeah, there was one that David sent out where all you have to do is kind of hit on the click on the link and it gets you right there. Yeah, hang on.
Doesn't join me to anything.
Huh. Okay. Well,
Everybody else is in?
yeah, right now I've got David, Kathleen, Scott, and Chris, and Huntley,
And Sarah.
Sarah.
and Sarah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sarah's not visual.
Aha, that's right.
To get your meeting done.
Yeah, we weren't going to be voting on anything, as far as I'm aware.
Right. I looked at the agenda and it's a discussion.
Yep. Okay. So, you
Well,
know,
I apologize. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I
What?
sometimes have,
Well, you can call in too.
Yeah, you can call in.
I tried two different numbers for the call-in. So anyway, have the meeting. I apologize. I don't know what I've done wrong, but I'm sure it's something a child would rectify in a moment.
He may need to cut and paste the HTTPS, that the whole line. It's not a link that you can click on. It came through my email.
Okay, well, I've got the email, e-news email.
Oh, that doesn't, when you look at it, the e-news, it does, the link is dead. It's only in my invite that the link is active, that I sent you directly.
And
Well,
the area code 301 call-in number worked for me earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. I have that one, 301-5-852.
Yep.
Well, I'll do that again. If I can get in there, I'll join you guys. And if not, have a darn good meeting.
all right, Dick, appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. There we go.
I saw Huntley come in.
Yeah, he's muted, but he's not on video.
Yeah, he's just, yeah, it looks like he's just called in.
Oh, okay.
And just so I make sure I do this right this time, is there anybody on the phone that I have not acknowledged? I have Hank on the phone, I have Will on the phone, I have Huntley on the phone. Just because we didn't take attendance last time, and I want to make sure I get people that are on the phone that I can't see.
All right, we got a good attendance last time, so Will did a good job.
Thank you. I did have quite a bit of help from David on making sure the making sure the names are spelled properly and such, and make sure people were represented when they spoke in.
Very good.
So-
Thank
Mhm.
All right, so let's call this meeting to order. It's a meeting for conversation tonight. And we'll have a couple of things to talk about as listed on the agenda, but let's make sure. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
All right.
Let's just go through the usual stuff. First, let's make sure we have the voting members. I see 6 members
Dick's on.
available, and Huntley, even though you're an alternate, because Dick is the one who's not here.
He is here now.
I can't, I got through.
Good.
I got through on a phone line.
All right, you're in. All right, so we're all here.
I try to be.
Well, we're at least physically present. I'm not sure about the all.
No, I'm electronically present.
Okay, we have minutes from last meeting. Has everybody reviewed them or looked at them? Any issues?
No.
I move that we approve the minutes from last meeting.
I hear a second.
Second.
Having a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Yay. All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, 2 items to talk about. And the agenda is set such that we would talk about the NCC activity first, and then take just a quick discussion around short-term rental questions that have come up regarding which zone any particular property might be in. So let's move forward to the NCC stuff. Anybody take a look at that? Questions, problems, concerns? Let's just open it up. Who wants to start?
Well, question I had is it possible to make copies available, the draft at the town office so that we can sort of trial it a little bit, and that might point out some places that need further work or are, still confusing. But is there a way that we can show it to some people that are looking for our zoning and see how it does for them?
Yeah, it's currently posted on the
Okay.
Town website.
I tried to find it again tonight so that I could have it up on my tablet so that I could, because I didn't want to print out 47 pages. And it didn't seem to be there anymore. The link that she had put up, I clicked on it and all I got was just the, meeting agenda and so on.
And I've also looked at our zoning a few times recently, and if there's a link to that, an anointed or annotated version, it's not, it certainly didn't jump out at me. I just went to the regular zoning ordinance.
Okay.
And didn't see any of
I
that.
couldn't get it either. Online, I couldn't get it either.
All right. I had checked this on, and maybe she took it off after a couple of brief emails that we had, David.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she pulled it or not.
But the attachments that she sent us, that Dana sent us, is not the full document. It's the quick guide.
There were 2 documents she
There
said.
were 2.
Yeah, there are 2.
There were 2, and it was a zipped file. You had to unzip it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
both of them.
there's a 47-page quick guide and an appendix that's 8.
Appendix.
Right. No, I have the zip guide. If anybody wants it, I can pull it up on my screen if you really want to.
Right.
Because I have it
But-
open on my doc. I have it open
but-
here if you guys
right.
want to see it.
But at 47 pages, is that not the entire?
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought.
It is the entire
Okay. Right.
zoning ordinance with their dated
Yep.
Well, maybe I thought quick guy meant short. I don't know.
I would have thought so too. Kathleen, how often, do you know how often do we hand out paper copies of the zoning ordinance to people that come in? You know, that, or at least used to come
Not
into the
unless they ask for it, but not very often.
Okay. That would be the best way to get feedback on something new is, you know, when you're handing something out to them and you have a chance to, you know, to go through it with them on the spot. But,
Well, I know we have the zoning ordinance that was done before, but we don't have the new one done. I mean, I haven't seen it at all.
no, I'm just asking when, you know, is it a regular occurrence for someone to come into the town office and ask for a copy of the zoning ordinance?
No, not that I know of. I'd have to ask Julie and Julie how often, and I can do that when I talk to Julie tomorrow.
Because if you know, if that happens on a regular basis and we can, you know, they can hand out this annotated version, you know, that would give us some pretty good feedback, I'm guessing, as to, you know, what people think of it. You know, whereas if we put up on the website, we may never hear from the people that look at it and really not know what they think of it as much.
Unless we put some instructions to it.
What do I press in order to be able to get a copy of it myself?
It was attached to the invite. I sent it to you in the invite.
It was attached to the email.
Yeah, just print it out.
Yeah,
I'll try it again.
yeah. In the initial email, it was the zip file attachment had what Sarah talked about, the 47-page document and another appendix document.
The appendix, I think, is only 8 pages.
Right.
If by any chance, send it to me again.
Sure.
Thank you.
And really, I'm just asking the board whether the board thinks that's a, you know, a good idea to gather, you know, feedback on it, you know, before we sort of stamp it or not.
I think so. Yes, and I also would like to have Kevin take a look at it too to make sure that it's okay with him. I mean, he knows more stuff than everybody else does.
And he has to implement it. He has to put it in place.
Just sent it to you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
I spent some time looking at it and going through it with the zoning ordinance. And I will say I am perhaps a little bit opinionated on this, but I felt through the years what we've done is really try to get the zoning ordinance as clean and concise as possible without sacrificing the legality of things. And as I went through the annotated version, I saw their annotations, and there was the one thing that kind of ticked me off a little bit. They were talking about the Jxn Planning Department as opposed to the board. But we would have, a lot of times we'll have the title, what this is, like saying, you know, 10.3 procedures. And then the little annotation on the side would say, this is a section that is the procedures. And then it would have so the requirements, and a little annotation on the side would say, these are the requirements. This is what you have to do to make this. And then they pulled out all of the charts, the various charts, and put them in the appendix. So it would make, it actually makes it more complicated, because if you want to know what the formula is, like for parking, the parking formula, it's right there, beautiful chart, and all they did is pull the chart out, put it in the appendix, and then when you go through up in the parking section 7, it says, see the appendix, as opposed to having it all in one place the way it is now. And there are a few places where they put it in maybe a little simplified language in their little call out. But my feeling is, for the few times that the call out is maybe useful, the few times that the whole effort, I think, is just, it's not needed.
Well, and certainly more words on the page, you know, for someone that's coming into it for the first time, it's just more words on the page and makes the whole thing look more complicated and you know, involved, you know, even if those extra words are intended to make things, you know, a little bit simpler.
Maybe something instead of, I mean, it looks, you know, more complicated. It's taken, our present zoning ordinance is what, 28, 29 pages, has made it 47 pages. And it may just be the way I think, the way I approach things, but for me, if what might make most sense is have maybe a more outline to the table of contents, maybe have it going down instead of just giving the section name, say, you know, the section, let me pick here, you know, section 4, which is the regulations, and then you would just have the subsections in that, such as, and these are all down, you know, 4.1 is townwide regulations, 4.2 is division of town into districts, 4.3 is district regulations, and then you have the rural residential district and then the village district. And so if you wanted to find something, it would give you the page, you could go right to it, but, you know, going from the table of contents.
Sarah, you mentioned that you thought some of the, you know, some of the callouts were, or annotations were, you know, some use. In going through it, they seem to have felt compelled to come up with something to say for nearly every single section. And I guess I don't see why I don't think that's necessary. And so do you think going through it and pulling out the ones that are, you know, do elucidate something that's a little bit complex, you know, but then point out all the others that are just really redundant?
Yeah, well, like they have for setback, then they have to give the Webster's definition of what a setback is. And they do that every time setback comes up on it. And then at other times they say, well, if you have any questions, check with the Jxn Planning Department.
Sure. It's like they used a template for a large city and weren't really dealing with us. All I'd say, I totally agree with Sarah, and I would like to say, you know, there's this old saying, you know, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. But I don't think we need to complicate the wording of this. I think we if anything, we need to sort it out and make it clearer, or is clearer a word? Make it more understandable rather than put layers of wording on it that we don't really need.
I would think that, you know, as you go through it, they're the that seem to make it simplified, give some simplified language clear. Maybe that's an indication to us to have a look at that particular section and see, do we need to read it to say what we
Right,
need?
yep. And maybe there's some language there that works better than the language we used.
Right, and in some cases, we have, you know, in legalese, they have to cover every possibility, and so, you know, we have every possibility, and so maybe on the call out, it makes it a little simpler, but I'm thinking.
I'm reading right now the non-conforming structure one.
Okay.
And what we wrote seems very clear to me. And God, I had to read the blurb like 3 times to figure out what it was saying.
Yeah, there were a few that I caught that were much more confusing than what we had written.
I thought the helicopter thing was really interesting.
No, I haven't seen that one yet. No.
Helicopter use?
Helicopters are, I think, gone now because Dan Dinsmore has died, and I think he was the last helicopter lander in Jackson.
Yeah, I'm still landing paragliders in Jackson, so you
No,
gotta
there is
watch out for me.
somebody, I'm sorry, there is somebody, David Abbott, who lives right above us, that does have a helicopter, and he does come.
You still have the current use.
And he still has the current use on his property. Doesn't come up very often, maybe 4 times a year, but that's irrelevant. But helicopter does come.
I've always been surprised that there isn't a sightseeing service in the valley with helicopters. And, you know, once they're in the air, there's really nothing you can do about it.
There's your new business.
Yeah. No, I'll fly people around in my paraglider. That'll be my retirement thing.
I was going to say that's what you should be doing. They get a better view.
Yep.
You're socially distanced too.
Yeah.
As long as you're quiet about it, Scott.
Didn't the helicopter pilot give the property away?
There was another property, and this we're talking, Sarah might remember more, this is like 15 years ago or more, that I think the property was sold, and the question is whether that use went with it, and I think there was a lapse in use, or maybe the property, did Dave Abbott sell the property and then repurchase it or something? I mean, it was some weird kind of back and forth thing, and the question is whether the helicopter use, sort of the grandfathered use, followed the, you know, the transfer of property, especially when use lapsed through one.
Well, I know
owner or
David,
something like that.
David went to court and won the case, so that's why he's allowed to still have it. Not a problem for us.
So what I'm hearing is that the product that we have is not satisfactory. And what we need to do is we need to do something different than what we've gotten from them in order, if we're going to use this stuff at all. So the question is that, do we want to pursue working with NCC on getting something that is useful for us? Or do we want to just say, this is, you know, we made an effort, but it's not coming out the way we want it to? Or I think my own feeling is that it would be good to have something that's, I think, Sarah, as you described, something that's easy to grab at pieces that you're interested in, instead of having to read 29 pages through or flip through 29 pages to get there. But I also agree that what we have from them, from Danica, is just not what we really anticipated.
I think when we first started, I guess my assumption was that they were going to go through and, you know, look for the language that we had used that could be cleaned up, or redundancies, you know, within what we had, or, you know, whether it was a language issue or a, you know, a more of a technical sort of redundancy or conflict or something. I thought they were going to sort of, you know, vet our zoning ordinance as opposed to do what they did.
Yeah, I think we had several requirements. I agree. We asked if they would take a look at it and see whether or not there was anything that didn't fit with general expectation of what should be in a zoning reg. See if there was any wording that could be more uniform, I guess the best way to say it nicely, to what expectation might be, or, you know, generally accepted kind of wording that there might be, that we're not using, that might be better available to folks who look at 12 different zoning ordinances.
Yeah.
And the other was to provide for some sort of reference point or some ability to make it easier to understand some of the more complex sections, if it was observed that there were such things.
Well, how much money do we have into this right now? And are we maybe 60 to 70% there? And do we, if that's the case, I mean, why don't we throw it back to them and give them a little bit more parameters of what we're looking for? I don't see throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I really think you should wait and let Kevin see this, Kevin Bennett look at this. I know he's not been real happy with it, what he's told me, what we're getting. And I think the whole idea was to, make sure that it's agreed with our master plans and the RSAs. And also what's up to date with what's happening in the state. I know Kevin said to me that there was things in there she wasn't even addressing as far as the state went, the rules and regulations and that kind of stuff. So I think if we just throw it at Kevin and ask him to take a look at this stuff, since he implements all this information and he has to look at this and see what he has to say about it. I mean, he's more the expert than some of us.
Well, then he doesn't need to even, well, he can look at what she put together, but it's more, it sounds like, Kathleen, you would just want him to look at our document the way it is now and to identify sections that may, if it doesn't go along with the state, for us to look at, or things that are confusing, whatever. I mean, any help we can get in making this thing clearer, I think would be useful. If there are sections that we need to look at, maybe reconsider or redraft.
But my understanding was that she wasn't going to update it or change or add anything to it at this round. That was the next round that they were going to pay, that we would have to pay for her to upgrade this. So this was taking our current document and playing with the words. Now, I don't think she was supposed to add anything. I go back and look at the original proposal, but I think this was just a cleanup, because that's what we had asked her to do is the second round, or the next round was to make sure that we're in line with everybody. But I don't think that was the purpose of this one.
I thought the second round was something different, but I don't remember what it is now. I just, if that's true, I would have thought they'd do the first part, that what you're describing is the second part first. First go through and correct it, and then go through and annotate it, I would think.
The thing is, to make corrections for it, if it's substantive, that has to be a vote of the town.
Right. But what's the point of going through and making annotations when you're going to turn around and change the document anyhow, if that's what they were going to do as part of the second phase? It sounds to me like, just, having Kevin look at it, I can't see how that would hurt. Certainly probably would help. And then maybe if we all spent a little more time, I mean, Sarah certainly has done her homework, but I think I at least could, spend a little more time going through it and maybe identifying things that we think are helpful and stuff that we think is really not helpful, and see what we're left with at that point.
Okay, Danica was not available for this meeting. We could not schedule her. Otherwise, I think it would have been useful to have her as part of the discussion. On the other hand, we're not all that happy with what the product is. It might be just as well that we're talking about it and then figure out how we want to get back to her.
Well, at this point, excuse me, I wouldn't throw any more money at it right now until we're kind of clear on what we're going to ask them to do. We're not asking them to, rewrite our zoning ordinances. And I think maybe within their suggestions, there's wording that we can use, but I think we can do that ourselves. We've got a pretty good zoning ordinance that has worked, and I don't think we've had too many legal problems with it. So, I think we can sort this thing out. If we need to go back to North Country Council, I think we should go back really with a firm statement of what we want out of it. I wouldn't just turn them loose with our document again.
I agree with what you just said. Ted.
Thank you.
I just pulled up their proposal, and there is nothing in there about upgrading the ordinance or doing anything. It's literally translation and grammar and wording. That's all she was supposed to do.
And what was the phase 2 part?
We didn't approve phase 2.
Right, but there was a phase 2, right? That we decided to wait until we saw how phase 1 went before we.
Phase 2 was to do that piece, was to go through.
Wait, what was phase 1? Can you share your screen with us?
Sure, okay, yep, no problem. Okay, so did everybody see that?
Yeah.
So this is the agreement. So this was the project.
Well, the phase 2 they're describing sounds more like what we just got.
Right. But there was a phase 3. Remember, there was a phase 3 that we didn't want. That was the next.
Oh, okay.
And that was where she was going to go in, because this is all we agreed to was this.
Was phase 2 or phase 2 and phase 1?
Phase 1 and phase 2. And this was the $2,600 that.
Right. But have we gotten anything regarding the, if you, in that phase 1, they sort of vet it for legality and, sort of more technical,
Is that, she gave us, I remember getting a copy of the zoning ordinance, and it looked as all she had done was just kind of change the format and the typeface type of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know as there was, ensure clarity, grammar, punctuation, overall legality. I don't remember anything that she said.
Regarding the language already in it.
Right. And it ended up, I think, just, making it, forgive me for saying this, but making it look prettier.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's perfect already, and that's why they didn't come up with anything.
Well, if you read.
I'll take credit for that.
I'll give you credit for that.
If you read phase 2, number 1, it talks about the fact that the design is the draft include translation versions in order to maximize user comprehension of the document. Remember, we all agreed on, that's why she has those bullet pullouts. She gave us like 3 or 4 examples.
Right. Oh yeah, no, I agree. Phase 2 looks like what we got. Right. It's just that they didn't give us any real review of our current wording. But maybe they didn't really find any issues with it. In terms other than seeing places where they thought, they could come up with some plain speak to make it a little bit easier for, someone not as familiar with all of this.
We good with this?
Yep.
Yeah. I think I'll go back to, my suggestion of a few minutes ago is simply to give it an expanded table of contents and to make it easier for people to find. And as we do that, we might consider whether we need to make some more titles that make more sense, that convey more information, just to make it easier for people to find what piece of the zoning ordinance they need.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. I guess I'd go through, and if there are any, annotations that, that really do make things a little more understandable, but not in a way that we can incorporate into the language itself. I don't have a problem with having a little sidebar here and there to
explain. Well,
explain.
maybe we just need to look at then the original language and say, okay,
right,
how can we make this clearer?
yeah.
Do we want to go through, not tonight, but do we want to go through all those little call outs and decide, like Bill said, decide which ones we don't need?
Yep.
No, I don't want to do that.
And we do, if you go to the zoning ordinance online, at the Jxn website, there we do have something of a appendix. It lists all the different sections. You can go to that single section. What it doesn't do is either you go to the full ordinance or you go to a single section, but then if you want to read, beyond the section, you have to go out and back to the full ordinance. It probably ought to just land you on the section that you click on, but you still have the full ordinance to look
Yeah,
through.
agreed. That's much more useful.
And that's more of a formatting, which,
Yeah, that can be changed
Right.
pretty easily, I think.
Yeah.
But anyhow, there is something of what you described, Sarah, on our website.
I'll have to check that out, yeah.
So incorporating something like that into the actual, the actual ordinance, the paper copy too. would help. Good thing
Okay,
Jerry has his pants on.
As far as moving forward, I apologize. My dog wanted to interact with me while I was on the Zoom thing. It's like, no, I can't really throw the ball for you right now. But Linda's managed to get him away from here. Anyway, what?
All right, our grand dog just arrived, so I have him running around right now.
There you go. So we have
Grand dog, I say, grand dog.
a couple of things we want to do then. We'd like to end up having a review by Kevin. And we'd like to all probably take a look at this thing a little bit more and see if there's anything that's salvageable from what we've got so far. And I think the other thing is determine whether or not there's what we really want. And I think, Sarah, to your point around just maybe the table of contents being a for sure, and then see what else there is that after we look at it, yeah, maybe or maybe not. To Dick's point around not wanting to have them go to a phase 3 or whatever, I think whatever we do, we should stay within what we've contracted and paid for already and not extend any further. Just simply to keep whatever expenditures we have down, considering where things are right now. And see what things we like or don't like and keep the things we like and just not work with the things we don't. Any thoughts?
Would hard copies of their suggestions be useful if everybody had a hard copy to work with, or are you all happy with what you can get on your screen?
No, I like hard copies. It's better to go back and review it that way. Well, in my opinion, but I'm kind of old-fashioned that way. So
I've got a hard copy. I just printed it out.
the only thing with her hard copy, it's a PDF, so you can't alter it. You can't change it. You have to make notes on it.
Well, couldn't she send us a Word copy that, it would seem to me that maybe between Scott and Sarah and Kevin and, going over this, that they could come up with with something that's acceptable. I don't mean to pass it on to them.
Does it, Chris? Does it really?
But I don't know how to do it.
Well, there is one thing, actually, Chris and Kathleen and Huntley, to go through the document, give yourself a chunk of time to do this, and read through it, and where are you confused? What sections do you want to have that you think should be stated better?
Well, this is the part that confuses me where it says draft. I don't get that.
No, you're not being drafted. It's not anymore.
It was.
Bone spurs, bone spurs.
But, trying to do this by committee just, to me is, doesn't work. You need somebody to take charge of it, do it. And I hear what everybody's saying. And, I think there's a couple of people that are competent enough to do it.
I think it would be a committee, but not the whole board. Maybe there are one or two folks that could work on it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll make a suggestion, and that is I'm willing to go through and make the expanded expanded table of contents. But also, if everybody could go through it and just identify a particular section that seems confusing to you, just identify. You don't have to redo it, but let's identify these different sections. There may be a half dozen of them, and then we'll have a look at those. And if we need to reword it, we can do that. And I will alert you to the fact that the section on the flood, is it areas of flood hazard, section 12, that was handed to us by the flood, whatever it's called, the federal agency. And we had to put it in the way they said it. So that's.
You can skip it.
Yeah, skip it.
Stay away from the floods.
That has to do, I think it has the language to make it consistent with the flood insurance program, so that, you'll get insurance, you're covered by insurance as long as you adhere to all of their regulations and et cetera. But the rest.
That's a big section, so that'll cover a lot of it.
You're right.
Any other sections we shouldn't read, Sarah?
Hey, the job's half done.
Parking looks good.
All right.
I wouldn't do anything with that short-term rental section.
And Dick, you can take credit for the lighting, the lighting section.
All right. Yes, but it has to be enforced.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother ball of wax.
Right. As does the short-term, glad you brought short-term rentals, because we have been dealing with that and it's being abused. We have one landlord who's using the 31-day, he's getting 31-day documents for short-term rentals. I mean, the wording on the contract is within our regulation, or the state's regulations, really, because 31 days, I think, is pretty across the board what we've found. But they found a way to abuse it. We've had to shut one guy down up in the notch.
On the 31 days, how is he using that? Is he claiming that he's renting properties for 31 days, but then not actually?
Right, and then people are coming up for the weekend, or maybe they'll come up for the 3 weekends, but they're not what we would consider a 31-day rental. In other words, they're not in residence for 31 days. They're using it as a short-term rental. And, whatever. But it's just one of the places. I think the biggest thing we have to do is get our registration form in place and, just have an idea of where all these properties are that are being used as short-term rentals. And that's going to be the biggest thing, because as Chief Purley says, they almost have to do it on a complaint basis. In other words, a neighbor has to come up and say, there's a party going on, or, hey, this place is being rented to different people, you know, every weekend. So anyway, I think we have to just kind of look at getting the registration in place so we know where these properties are, and, you know, keep an eye on them.
Well, that'll bring us to our second agenda item, and that is term rental and talk about zoning. I think just briefly, we have been working with Peter Malia to put together the instructions and affidavit for the short-term rental. I believe that has been set for agenda for you guys, the select board. Dick, is that correct?
Yes, I'm happy with it. I've read it over on the screen, but John and Barbara wanted to have a hard copy to, you know, to really look at it, and that's great. I think we should take a good hard look at it, but I think we're probably at our next meeting, we'll take a vote on it and get it in place, and I think that'll be really helpful, a helpful document to have. And it'll be helpful for Chief Pearlie so that he has something, you know, concrete to work with.
It would have been nice to have in place, 60 days ago.
It sure would have been.
Yeah. The other thing that's come up apparently is, and I'm not sure if it's somewhere within town offices, is either the assessor or one of the Julies or somebody called in, but relative to determining what properties fit within rural residential versus not. And, you know, that's pretty easy if you're a half mile up Carter Notch. But it may not be quite as simple for someone who's, maybe on Switchback or, something like that.
And especially Route 16,
Back
because
Thornhill Road, into Nesselnook is another place. All those, you know, they're right on the cusp. They're right on the edge, and it really needs to be clarified.
Right. Well, and the issue is that we don't really have a boundary line. What we have is a distance from the center of Route 16. So it cuts across properties. So there are properties where part of the property is within commercial and part of the property is within residential. And now short-term rentals, we have two different situations that has led to. One is, a single family dwelling unit that is on a property where part of the property is residential and part is commercial, and where does that fall? And then maybe even a little bit more complicated is something like Nesselnook or Wentworth, where a large units, multiple units on the same property are going to fall in and out of commercial and residential, not just a single unit. And so, that's really the nut of the issue.
Yeah, what was
that was the other attachment that I sent on the invite.
I don't really have the history of how the zoning was established. Was the 500-foot rule just to kind of give a sort of thing, or because we see that, for example,
it was the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that the expectation was that that's where commercial development would occur, would be within 500 feet of Route 16, at least in that particular.
And 16A too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But usually you put businesses near a thoroughfare of some sort. Short-term rentals are a little bit different because they actually prefer to be further away than, if possible, I'm guessing, especially from 16. So again, you have properties where the part of the property is in commercial, but the short-term rental unit might be on the residential part of the property, particularly if it's a single family dwelling unit. And then the cluster developments where you have multiple units that are falling on both sides of the boundary line of sorts.
But doesn't the short-term rental just depend on the property where, the property itself?
Well, the property itself is both commercial and residential. So
You mean
It can't be. It has to be one of them.
yeah, what I proposed to Bill was that for single family dwelling units, if the structure is on the commercial side, is in the commercial zone, then it is eligible for unlimited short-term rental. But if the structure is in the residential part of the property, then it falls under residential. But for developments like Wentworth and Nesselnook that are cluster developments, if any part of the property is commercial, then the rest of it is also commercial in terms of short-term rental.
And I thought that was really good, Scott. I like the idea. I think it gets us out of issues with people protesting that, I'm one building over from, the 500-foot mark, and or my bedroom's halfway in the.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, the bedroom on one use, but you can't rent out the other bedroom.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's certainly possible.
The white line. Don't we need a white line that goes right around town?
Yeah, I mean, I think it begs some sort of hard boundary, and I don't know if we then thought, if we're going to follow property boundaries, then it's going to be a jagged line to some degree. But there's been discussion on the board about, coming up with, additional districts, changing how, Route 16 north of town is districted. So I didn't know whether it might be a good time to have a larger district conversation at the same time we try to rectify the boundary issue.
Right, because I think it was after we got the build out that she was making the suggestion that we'd want to look at zoning districts, and we might want to.
It'd give us more control over the kind of development that we want.
Yeah. Expand it, maybe have more than 2 districts, and so that you can control what development happens where.
Yeah.
Do we want to do that as a board? Do we want to open up that can of worms?
Can we take it one at a time? I think that establishing the boundary right now is important, and I think that our discussion for other zoning districts will take some time. So I would say that if we work on the boundary, and I love Scott's idea that, if it's a residential and it's not in the commercial district, no. And if it's, cluster like Wentworth, where it's a group of housing, you don't have to say, well, my neighbor's, able to do this and I can't. No, I think that's really an accurate way to do it.
We probably should pass that by Peter.
To work on that first, and then go to whatever we may think of additional zoning districts. Thank you.
Can we get approval from the select board to talk to Peter Malia about the suggestion that Scott had?
It's not going to measure it.
Okay, where do we need Peter?
To ask about whether or not we run into any trouble with Scott's suggestion around the cluster housing treatment within the 500. Are we going to end up with any?
Or even a single family unit one.
No, I think that would be a productive conversation. So I would like to check with my compadres, but you know, it would be something I would want to do. So I'd say yes. I think that we can go ahead and talk to Peter about that.
Okay, thank you.
And I agree. I do agree with Dick that, you know, getting that out of the way first, that is the more pressing issue. And we could really go on for quite a while on redistricting.
Oh, you know our history.
Yeah, I'd like to keep it simple.
Mhm.
Bring your back to your initial conversation, Dick. Let's keep it simple.
KISS.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Particularly the last S, I'm very familiar with.
Yeah, I've got the stupid handled.
Oh, goodness.
Bill,
All right.
Jerry wanted to know if he could speak to the board.
Sure, we'll recognize and we'll make sure you add Jerry into our conversation about attending the meeting. Thank you. But yeah, please, Jerry, if you would.
With regard to the cluster developments like Wentworth Hall, for example, Wentworth Hall and most cluster developments are what are called zero lot lines, meaning that the dimension of the building is the dimension of the owner's property. The common lands are not part of the owner's property. Those common lands are held in common by the association. Only those properties that would fall within the 500-foot center line, which Kevin would be the one that would be determining that. None of the planning board members or Peter are going to go out and measure that. It's going to be Kevin that's going to do it. But the buildings are zero lot line. The common land is not owned by the individual, it's owned by the association. And therefore, if they're outside the 500 feet, even though they're part of Wentworth, they would not be included in the village district.
Well, again, why we ought to talk to Peter to see if that really
We
is
need
something.
Peter Malia to weigh in. I understand that logic, but how it holds up, you know, I think everything should be held up to a legal standard. So let's find out.
Yeah, you know,
It might make sense to actually look at the map, the the property map, and if it's to scale, and just figure out what 500 feet is and see how many properties this is going to affect.
Yeah. Maybe it's not as big a deal as we really think it is.
It may not be, because most of that, the properties are single homes. There's that one vacation rental, which is right on Route 16. So that building is definitely within the 500 feet. But then, where the 500 feet comes out around 16A, which is where it would affect Wentworth. But other than Wentworth, I can't think of any other development that's multi-unit.
Mm-hmm.
It affects Nusselnook.
What about out by Dana Place and those condominiums out there?
Yeah, there's that too. So anyway, we should look at it. I think we'll, float our idea to Peter and see what he says about, common land, and whether the association, if part of the association is in the district, whether that carries over. Anyway, I think we need some guidance. I think we're probably pretty close. I think we can do it. I don't think it has to take us too much time. I think we can establish something that, again, Peter, if he has to defend it, do we get the words correct that he can defend?
Yep. Yeah, and Jerry, thanks for your comment. My experience with lawyers is that they can argue things both ways.
The sophists.
So, you bring up something and you say, well, this is the way it is. And one person will argue, well, that's the reason why you should. And someone would say, that's why you shouldn't.
Right.
And depending on which benefits you most or disadvantages you most, you'll find a lawyer that will be willing to bring it to court.
Which is why I say we should really look at the map and see how many properties we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we need to be specific. We need to have a plan. We need to be, have a statement, and I agree, Dick, it needs to be something that the town needs to defend if we did have somebody sue us.
Do we have any way, is there any way to look at lot maps that show, topo lines or have a scale or something that you can actually, have some idea of distances and features and such?
Yeah, I was going to try to do a Google map to practice with Google Maps.
Yeah.
Because you do a distance, real distance.
Yeah. Can you layer our zoning map, or our lot maps on top of that, so that you can
actually that you can actually see, depending on how you turn, which access you use. Some of them do have lot lines. For example, if you look at Zillow and that sort of thing,
okay,
you can get a lot line onto the property. They're not perfect, but they're close enough for what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. When I look at the maps online, you really have no idea where the lines are in reference to, the land.
There's no scale on those maps.
I don't think, it doesn't show features. It doesn't show topo lines. I mean, you really.
But you can do a measure. For example, you can measure what the crow fly distance is between two spaces.
Yeah, it's more just features and, topo lines, so you have some idea where, where the lines fall actually on the land itself.
Yeah.
I could look at a map with lot lines, but other than finding, maybe the corners, it's really difficult to see, okay, at this point along this boundary line, where is that really in reference to the land itself without actually going out and, walking it. But,
there is a database.
We may have something for that.
Yoo-hoo. There is a database, the Granite database, which North Country Council may have access to, which has all the different layers. You can use I think it's GIS based.
Yep.
Layers, the topo layer, then you can put other layers in. And I think when she did the build out, she may have used that, and we should probably check back onto those maps.
Yeah.
Because she had, I think there was one that had property lines on it.
Yeah. And I think I looked for or found something like that, but then I just couldn't really figure out how to make it all work or something.
Right. Well, you have to have the right software to be able to take the different layers and put them on top of each other.
But yeah, it's something whenever I look at, lots, unless it's a subdivision plat, it's really hard to figure out where things are at.
I think bottom line though, it's doable.
Yep.
I mean, we can do this, and we can do this with whatever software support there is out there, but we should be able to figure this out and give a pretty good. I don't know. It just doesn't seem that there's going to be that much of it.
Yeah. Oh, for the commercial district thing. Yeah.
Bill, Jerry wanted to know if he could speak again.
Jerry, recognize again.
Thank you. Scott, you alluded to it, but consider a question to Peter. If the property line is within the village district, but the building is not, how would Peter classify that?
Right, yeah. And does it matter where the building is or, you know?
I think that's a suggestion would be to ask Peter if the property line is within the village district, is that qualifying? Or is the fact that the building is out, while the property line is within the district, but the building itself is outside the property line, does that exclude it?
Right. Well, that would be more consistent, I think, with what you were saying about an association like Wentworth.
Yes, but now you're talking about a contiguous property as opposed to multiple properties within a.
Yeah.
I think the legal, it's for Peter to say, but I think the legal definition would be a little bit different in each case.
Yeah, it may very well be. That's why we probably ought to talk to him.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate your comments.
Tax maps.
All right. So we'll follow up on that. We've got some work assignments then.
Yep.
For the NCC activity, and then we're also going to do some work between now and our next meeting to figure out what we can do for this districting process. Make sure that the existing districts are properly defined. And we'll work with Peter on language. I assume we're going to do a June meeting.
Yep.
I think we'll do it via Zoom unless there's some magical thing that happens between now and then.
I think Zoom forever.
Maybe forever.
Definitely the way to have a meeting.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing is that it's likely we may have a subdivision application for the June meeting. And somebody from HEB mentioned that they're working on something, and I haven't seen anything on it other than they asked about what they need to do for the interim process. Basically said it's going to be the same as usual. The only difference is going to be that we'll review it in a Zoom virtually instead of live.
Well, one thing, Bill, that maybe you already know, I'm sure no one's going to challenge us on a vote on the minutes or something like that or adjourning the meeting, but it may be that for something of greater consequence, a roll call vote is, I don't know if it's required for a virtual meeting as opposed to.
I've gone through that, Dick Bennett here.
Yeah.
I've gone through that. If it's other than unanimous, then we do a roll call.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree with the interpretation.
Okay, sounds good.
Alrighty.
Next meeting would be June 11th.
Second Thursday.
June 11th.
Yes.
Yeah, and if we do have a subdivision, that will be public notice. We'll have to do the whole 9 yards, public hearing, blah, blah, blah.
And we'll have to have access to the plots.
Yes, and those will be posted.
Do you have any idea where it is, Bill?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
And did we determine whether a checklist can be gone through prior to the meeting to ensure that everything is there, whether it's, I don't know, if one of the Julies can go through the checklist and check everything off? And is that necessarily a meeting function to go through the checklist?
It would be really good to do that before the meeting. Then we all have something that we already know about it before we actually attempt to do it.
Right, but I think it's a legal requirement that it be gone through in some sort of formal way. But does that have to occur at the meeting, or can there be someone designated to do it prior to the meeting?
Doesn't
I would,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think the chairman could, or some designated person could go through the checklist. I mean, that's what we do. We read through it and somebody says, yeah, I see the north arrow and I see the abutters list. I think we could accept one of our members that would say, yeah, we went through the checklist and looks good.
And there are certain, there's certain items that are physical items that, like the mail receipts and the checks for all the fees and things like that. So someone has to have those in person to verify those. So it'd be great to not to have to spend the time at the meeting, but at the same time, I don't want to levy the whole job onto one person, whether it's you, Bill, or one of the Julies or whomever.
I mean, I work with the, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the benefit of doing it at the meeting previously is to make sure that we collectively agree that everything's been done.
Mm-hmm.
And not one person is looking at it, makes an error, and then all of a sudden we've got something that's out of whack.
Yeah.
Under the circumstance that we're in right now, I'm not sure it's easy to do that. And so I think it may be beneficial to at least have somebody go through and say they've done that, and then at the meeting say, the checklist has been gone through. I have to sign off on that. So I think it's my responsibility, any which way.
Mm-hmm. It boggles me that we get incomplete checklists from surveyors, the same surveyors that we talk to month after month after month. It just, I can't believe it sometimes.
I think that if we have one, I'll take responsibility for the review.
And then if there is anything on the checklist that is questionable as to whether it's there or not, we can discuss that at the meeting.
Yep.
Thanks, Bill.
Well, like.
Way to set a precedent for us.
It's still my responsibility. I have to sign it.
Yeah, I know.
I just had a quick question. I know there's the formal checklist, but like Julia and I were talking, is there a way that we could have an administrative checklist that Julia and I could go through when we get the letters, we get the, get the mail out, I get the letters, we post it,
Mm-hmm.
that we can include with that bill for you. So at least, these things were done.
Yep.
It's not the formal document, but something else.
Yeah, yes, we can work out something on that.
Okay.
I make a motion.
I was going to say, Dick, I can't see you taking your hat off.
Take your hat off?
I will take it off,
I'll second it, Dick. I'll second it.
I'll third it.
Okay. I did take my hat off to sit down for this meeting, and I'm going to put it back on right now.
There we go.
All right, I make a motion.
I heard a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Okay, we don't have to get a head count. Thanks.
See you guys. Have a good night. Stay well.
Bye, be safe.
Be safe.
Bye.
Stay sane.